He destroyed his entire multi-million-dollar criminal empire just to save a waitress from having her throat slit. Luca Romano was Chicago's most terrifying boss, until a rival family held a knife to the only woman who made him feel human, forced to choose between ultimate power and her life. He did the unthinkable. He surrendered his entire illegal network to the feds. But walking away from the Mafia is never that easy, and surviving the fallout will be an absolute bloodbath. The first mistake Nina Torres made that morning was looking into the stranger's eyes. If she had kept her head down, poured the coffee, wiped the counter, and gone back to pretending she was invisible, her life might have stayed small. Hard, yes. Exhausting, yes, but small enough to survive. It was raining in Chicago, the kind of rain that made the sidewalks shine like broken glass and turned every alley into a black mouth. Nina came into Kowalski's diner 14 minutes late, with wet socks, tired eyes, and only $3 in her pocket, after paying Mrs. Chen to watch her little brother. Mr. Kowalski shouted before she even tied her apron. He told her one more late morning and she was done. Nina nodded. She said she was sorry. She did not explain that Matteo had woken from another nightmare at 4 in the morning. She did not explain that he had sat on the kitchen floor with his hands over his ears, shaking without making a sound. She did not explain that her 7-year-old brother had not spoken a full sentence in 8 months, not since the accident, not since the night their parents' car went off a wet road and folded around streetlight like paper. People liked simple stories. Dead parents, poor sister, silent child. They did not like the long version. The long version was too heavy to carry before breakfast. So Nina smiled. She picked up the coffee pot. She moved from table to table, filling cups, apologizing for eggs she had not cooked, and pretending the ache in her feet was not real. Around 10, the breakfast rush thinned. The diner grew quiet. That was when she saw him. A man sat in the corner booth, half hidden beneath a black hooded coat. His hands were wrapped around a coffee mug, but he had not taken a sip. He was not old, mid-30s, maybe, broad shoulders, dark hair, a face that looked like it had been carved, then damaged. A bruise stained his cheekbone purple. His lip was split. His knuckles were scraped raw, but he sat perfectly still, too still, like someone who had spent his whole life learning not to flinch. Nina knew danger when she saw it. She had grown up around men who raised their voices before they raised their hands. She had waited tables long enough to know the difference between tired and hunted. This man was hunted. She should have stayed away. Instead, she walked to him and asked if he wanted anything to eat. "Just coffee," he said. His voice was low, rough, like gravel under rain. "We have pancakes," she said. "Not good ones, but they are warm." One corner of his mouth lifted, then disappeared. "Coffee is enough." She filled his cup. She noticed his eyes then, dark brown, sharp, sad in a way that made her chest tighten before she could stop it. She hated that. She did not have room in her life for strangers' sadness. She had Matteo. She had rent. She had a landlord who liked to knock hard on the 1st of every month. She had a school counselor asking why Matteo still would not speak. She had a broken heater, a cracked phone, and a fear that one official letter could take her brother away. She turned to leave. Then the bell above the door rang. The whole diner seemed to stiffen. Detective Riley Kane walked in wearing a gray coat and a badge on his belt like a threat. He was a big man with pale eyes and a face made of bad habits. Nina had seen him in the neighborhood before. Everyone had. He asked questions that sounded polite until you heard the warning underneath. He smiled at mothers and frightened their sons. He shook hands with shop owners and left them counting money under the counter. People said he was a cop. People also said he belonged to men who did not wear uniforms. Kane's eyes swept the room. Then they stopped on the stranger in the corner. Nina felt it before she understood it. The air changed. The stranger's fingers loosened around the mug. Kane's hand moved toward his gun. Nobody spoke. Even the cook stopped scraping the grill. Kane walked toward the booth, slow, confident. "You," he said. "Let me see some ID." The stranger looked up, calm, too calm. "I am drinking coffee. You'll be drinking it downtown if you don't show me your ID." Nina knew, with a sudden certainty that scared her, that if those two men were left alone, someone would die. Maybe not in the diner, maybe not right there, but soon. There are moments in life when fear becomes a door. Most people close it. Nina stepped through. She moved between Kane and the booth, putting her small body in front of a man who looked like he could break her life in half. "Eddie," she said, too brightly. "You came all the way from Detroit and didn't tell me." Both men stared at her. Kane's eyes narrowed. The stranger blinked once. Then he understood. "Hey, cousin," he said. His voice stayed steady. "I didn't want to bother you at work." Nina could feel her pulse in her throat. "You never bother me. How is the car factory?" Kane turned his cold gaze on her. "Cousin." "Yes," Nina said. "My cousin Eddie, from Detroit." "What factory?" Kane asked. Her mind went blank. She could see Mr. Kowalski watching from the counter. She could see a trucker in booth 3, slowly lowering his fork. She could hear rain ticking against the window. "The Ford one," she said. Kane smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "Interesting." The stranger leaned back, just enough to look bored. "Detroit has more than one car factory. Detective. I work nights. Assembly. That is why I look like this." Kane stared at him, then at Nina. "You two close. Family is family," Nina said. The words came out before she could think. She wished she had not said them. Kane's face changed, just a little, like he had learned something useful. "Enjoy your visit," he said. He leaned close enough for Nina to smell tobacco on his coat. Chicago is not kind to strangers. Then he left without ordering. The bell rang again. The room breathed. Nina did not. Her legs felt weak. She looked down at the man in the booth. "You should go," she whispered. "You just saved my life," he said. "I do not know that." "I do. Then disappear before I regret it." His eyes held hers. There was gratitude there. And warning. "What is your name?" he asked. "Nina." "Nina," he repeated, like the name mattered. "You should forget my face. That will be easy," she lied. He left before her next table asked for more coffee. No goodbye, no explanation. Just an empty cup and a $5 bill under the saucer. For the rest of the shift, Nina told herself it was over. She had lied once. Kane had left. The stranger had vanished. Life would return to its usual problems. But life does not return to normal when you have stepped into someone else's war. At 2 in the afternoon, a black sedan slowed outside the diner and stopped beneath the broken streetlight. No one got out. The engine stayed on. Nina saw it through the rain-streaked window, while carrying plates to table 6. The man in the back seat did not lower the window. He only sat there. Watching, Nina blinked and looked again. The car was already pulling away. At 4, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. 1 photo. Mateo walking beside Mrs. Chen outside his school. His small hand in the old woman's hand. His backpack hanging low on his shoulders. Under the photo was one sentence. "Good sisters should be careful who they lie for." Nina almost dropped the phone. She ran into the supply closet and locked the door. Her first instinct was to call police. Then Kane's face came back to her. His badge, his smile, his hand near his gun. She deleted the message, then immediately regretted it. She checked her trash folder. Nothing. Gone. By the time her shift ended, every customer looked like a threat. Every bell over the door made her stomach tighten. Mr. Kowalski yelled at her for mixing up 2 orders. She apologized again, because apology was the rent poor people paid to keep standing in rooms where they were not respected. That night, after closing, Nina walked toward the bus stop with her keys between her fingers. The rain had stopped, but the street smelled wet and metallic. She heard footsteps behind her, heavy, matching hers. She walked faster. The footsteps did too. She turned a corner. The man followed. Her breath shortened. She was 2 blocks from the bus stop. Too far, she ducked into an alley, hoping to cut through to the next street. But the alley was darker than she remembered. A hand grabbed her shoulder. "Hey, waitress." She spun, but the man shoved her against the brick wall. His face was hidden under a hood. "You like helping people. You shouldn't help." Nina tried to scream. His hand clamped over her mouth. Then he was gone. Not gently. Torn away. He hit the opposite wall with a grunt. The stranger from the diner stood behind him. No hood now. No softness. His eyes were black in the alley light. "Walk away," he said. The hooded man cursed. The stranger stepped closer. He did not raise his voice. He did not have to. "I will not say it twice." The man ran. Nina's sneeze almost gave out. The stranger turned to her, and the danger left his face so quickly it startled her. "Are you hurt? How did you find me?" "I followed you." "That is not comforting." "It was not meant to be." She laughed once. "Because the alternative was crying." "Who are you?" He looked toward the street. "Someone you should have ignored." "That is not an answer. It is the safest one." He walked her to the bus stop and waited, under the yellow light. Scanning cars, windows, shadows. "Detective Kane," Nina said quietly. "He is not a good cop." "Is he?" The stranger's jaw tightened. "No, and you are not a factory worker." "No, are you a criminal?" He did not answer fast enough. That was answer enough. Nina stepped back. I have a little brother, I know. Her blood chilled. What, you mentioned family. Kane heard it too. That means he will look. Look for what? Weakness. The bus came hissing to the curb. Nina climbed on with shaking hands. When she looked out the window, the stranger was still there, standing alone in the wet street, watching until the bus pulled away. At home, Mateo was asleep on Mrs. Chenet's lap, his small body curled around a dinosaur book. Mrs. Chen, old and kind and too tired for the burden Nina kept placing on her, woke with a start. Long day. Too long, Nina said. She paid the woman with nearly the last of her tips. Mrs. Chen squeezed her hand. Child, you cannot keep living like this. Nina looked at Mateo, at his thin face, at the dark lashes resting on his cheeks. I am not living, she said softly. I am keeping us from falling. That night, she dreamed of the stranger's eyes and Kane's smile. The next morning, she found an envelope in her locker at the diner. $800. Clean bills, folded neatly. A note with one line. You risked yourself for a stranger. Courage should not go unpaid. No name, only an initial. Her first instinct was anger. Her second was relief so strong it made her dizzy. $800 meant rent, groceries, Mateo's medication, new shoes before winter. It meant breathing. Then Kane walked in. He sat in her section. He ordered coffee he did not drink. Your cousin Eddie does not exist, he said. Nina's hands trembled around the pot. Maybe you checked the wrong place. I checked every place. He leaned back. I also checked you. Nina Torres. Parents dead. Little brother in your care. No savings. Late rent. 2 warnings at work. School is concerned about the boy's silence. You are hanging by a thread. Nina felt the booth tilt beneath her. Leave my brother out of this. Kane's smile widened. Then tell me where Luca Romano is. There it was. The name. Luca Romano. Even Nina, who tried to stay away from men with power, knew that name. It lived in whispers. Romano trucks. Romano clubs. Romano construction. Romano charity. Romano bodies in the river. Though nobody said that part loudly, she forced herself to breathe. I do not know anyone by that name. Kane reached across the table and covered her hand with his. His palm was cold. You helped a monster. Monsters do not say thank you. They eat whatever hand gets close. Nina pulled away. Get out. His eyes hardened. Careful. A woman like you loses a child very easily. He left $5 on the table, like a joke. Nina finished her shift in a fog. At 6, she called Mrs. Chen and asked if Mateo was okay. Mrs. Chen said yes, but her voice shook. A man came by the school, she whispered. He said he was from child welfare. He asked questions about you. Nina gripped the phone until her fingers hurt. What man? Tall, gray hair, pale eyes. Kane, her knees went weak. Do not let Mateo out of your sight. I will not. And Mrs. Chen, yes, child, lock your door. That evening, Nina found her apartment door open. The living room was destroyed. Cushions ripped, drawers as emptied, the television cracked, family photos torn across the floor. Mateo, she found him under his bed, shaking so hard his teeth clicked. Both hands wrapped around his old stuffed dinosaur. He made no sound. He never made sound anymore. On the bathroom mirror, written in Nina's red lipstick, were 4 words. Stay out of this. On Mateo's pillow was a toy police badge. Plastic. Cheap. A child's toy. But across it, someone had scratched one word with a knife. Mine. Nina slid to the floor and held Mateo until her arms went numb. That was when she understood. Some doors, once open, do not close. And some acts of kindness become declarations of war. Luca Romano came to Nina's apartment the next evening, with empty hands and a gun under his jacket. Nina saw both. The empty hands first, because he held them up when she looked through the peephole. The gun second, because his coat shifted when he stepped inside, and the black handle flashed at his waist. Mateo sat at the kitchen table, small and silent, his dinosaur book open but unread. Nina moved between him and Luca without thinking. Take it out, she said. Luca looked at her. Nina, take it out and put it on the table. Or leave. Something passed across his face. Not anger. Respect, maybe. He slowly removed the gun and placed it on the little table by the door. Better. No, she said. But honest. He nodded. The apartment still smelled like bleach, from where Nina had scrubbed lipstick off the mirror. You could clean a threat from glass. You could not clean it from your mind. Luca looked around at the broken furniture, the torn photographs, the dresser Nina had pushed against the front door. His jaw tightened. I am sorry. I do not need sorry. I need to know if my brother is going to die, because I poured you coffee. The sentence hit the room hard. Mateo looked up. Luca followed Nina's gaze to the boy, and something in him changed. The coldness left first, then the distance. He looked at Matteo as if seeing a ghost he did not want to frighten. No, Luca said. Not if I can stop it, can you? Yes. That is what dangerous men always say. I am a dangerous man. At least you admit it. Lying would insult you. Nina folded her arms, though her hands were shaking. Are you a killer? Luca was silent. Outside, a siren wailed and faded. Matteo turned a page without looking down. Finally, Luca said, yes. Nina swallowed. Do you kill innocent people? No, that is supposed to make me feel safe. No, it is supposed to be the truth. She hated that the truth calmed her, more than a clean lie would have. Luca did not ask to sit. He stood near the door, leaving space between them. Like, he understood that power could be a kind of violence, if you used it wrong. The people who came here work for Angelo Moretti, he said. His family has been at war with mine for years. Your wife's family, Nina said. She did not know how she knew it until she saw his face. A small crack, a flinch that lasted less than a breath. Yes, the file in my life keeps getting thicker. Isabella was my wife. Marco was my son. He said the names carefully, like each one had edges. They were killed 3 years ago. Nina's anger softened before she could stop it. I am sorry. So am I. Did Moretti kill them? I believed it was a rival crew. I was wrong. And Cain. Cain belongs to Moretti. Badge on the outside, rod underneath. Nina looked toward Matteo. He threatened to call child services. Luca's eyes sharpened. He said that. Yes, he will not touch your brother. You do not get to say that like you own the world. I do not own the world. His voice lowered. But I know how men like Cain use it. Fear, paperwork, authority. They make good people feel helpless. That is how they win. Nina wanted to hate him. It would have been easier, but there was no pride in his voice. No performance, just knowledge. And pain. What do you want? She asked. Come with me. She laughed once. There it is. You are not safe here. I am not safe with you either. No, he said. But you are safer with me than waiting for them to come back. It was a terrible argument because it was true. Nina looked around her apartment. The couch with one leg propped on a book. The kitchen cabinet that never closed right. Matteo's school papers pinned to the fridge. The place was poor, but it had been theirs. Now it felt touched by strangers. Poisoned. For how long? She asked. Until I can end it. By killing everyone. Luca did not answer. Nina stepped closer. Listen to me. My brother has already seen too much. If I go with you, if I put him near you, I need to know he is not just trading one nightmare for another. Luca glanced at Matteo again. The boy was watching him now, his face pale but curious. I had a son, Luca said softly. He loved dinosaurs too. Matteo's fingers froze on the page. Nina saw it. Luca saw it. What was his favorite? Nina asked before she could stop herself. Luca's throat moved. Triceratops. He said they looked gentle until they had to protect themselves. For the first time all day, Matteo looked down at the book and touched the picture of a triceratops. Not a word. Just the touch. But Nina felt it like a door opening a crack. Pack light, Luca said. A car will come in 10 minutes. You assume I said yes. No, I am hoping. That was worse. Nina went to Matteo's room. She knelt before him. Buddy, we need to go somewhere safe for a few days. Matteo stared at her. I know, she whispered. I hate it too. He lifted his hands. She hugged him, pressing her face into his hair. He smelled like shampoo and fear. I will not let anyone take you from me, she said. I promise. When the black car arrived, Nina felt like she was stepping out of one life and into another. Dom drove. He was huge, with a shaved head and kind eyes that did not match the pistol on his hip. He introduced himself politely and asked Matteo if the heat was too high. Matteo shook his head. The city changed outside the window. Pawn shops became brownstones. Brownstones became iron gates and quiet streets. Nina held Matteo's hand while Luca sat beside them, silent, alert. Do people always call you boss? She asked. Most do. Do you like it? He looked out at the rain. I used to. And now it feels like a sentence. The Romano estate stood behind black gates and old trees, creamstone glowing under security lights. It was not loud wealth. It was older than that, heavier. Inside, marble floors reflected a chandelier so large Nina almost laughed from nerves. Men in dark suits nodded to Luca. Boss, there it was again. Not a title, a warning. Maria, the housekeeper, came down the hall with a curtain around her shoulders and worry in her eyes. She looked at Nina first, then Matteo, then at Luca, in a way that said they would discuss this later. The blue rooms, she asked. Please, Luca said, and warm milk for the boy. If he wants it. Matteo hid behind Nina. Maria smiled gently. No pressure. Sweetheart. In this house. Warm milk waits until it is invited. Nina liked her immediately. Upstairs, Maria opened a bedroom bigger than Nina's entire apartment. A connecting door led to a child's room painted soft yellow. There were shelves of untouched toys, dinosaur books, a small telescope by the window, a bed shaped like a race car. Matteo stepped inside as if entering a church. He walked to a plastic triceratops on the shelf and touched it with one finger. Nina looked at Luca. His face had gone still. This was Marca's room, she said. It was not a question. Luca nodded. I can move you somewhere else. No, Nina said softly, watching Matteo pick up the dinosaur with both hands. Maybe rooms should not stay empty forever. Luca looked at her then, and for a moment the dangerous man disappeared. What remained was someone broken enough to be gentle, with another person's broken pieces. That night, Nina could not sleep. The sheets were too soft. The house was too quiet. Rich people's silence was different from poor people's silence. In her apartment, silence meant listening for danger. Here silence meant danger was being kept outside by men with guns. She stepped onto the balcony for air. Luca was on the next balcony, shirt sleeves rolled up, a glass of water in his hand. No whiskey, no cigar, just water and a man who looked like he had not slept well in years. Can I ask you something? Nina said. You can ask. Will you answer? I will try. Why did you send the money? Because you needed it. That is not a reason. That is an observation. He almost smiled. Because I have spent most of my life believing every debt must be paid in blood or loyalty. You reminded me there are other kinds of debt. Human kinds, Nina said. Yes. Then let me remind you of something else. My brother is not a symbol. He is not your Yultkin chance. He is a child. Luca's expression changed. He did not defend himself. That mattered. You are right. And I am not Isabella. I know, do you? He looked away. The gardens below were dark and wet. I am trying to. The honesty was quiet. It reached her anyway. What happened to them? She asked. Luca gripped the balcony rail. They were driving home from Marco's school play. I was supposed to be there. I missed it because a shipment went wrong. Men with guns opened fire at an intersection. Isabella died before the ambulance arrived. Marco died at the hospital. His voice did not break, but something under it did. He was 4. He thought I could fix anything. Nina felt her throat tighten. Children think that because they have to. Does Matteo think that about you? No, she said. Matteo knows I am scared. He sees too much. That does not make you weak. No, it makes me tired. Luca looked at her. When did he stop speaking? After the accident. He was in the back seat. I was working late. My parents were driving him home. A witness said the road was slick. The car lost control. She rubbed her arms. I have repeated that sentence so many times it almost sounds true. Luca's attention sharpened. Almost Nina looked down at the garden. Some nights. Matteo wakes up and presses his hands over his ears, like he is hearing brakes, or a horn, or someone shouting. I asked the police if another car was involved. They said no. Who handled the case? I do not remember. Find out. Why? Because if Kane is near this, it may not be coincidence. The air changed again. Nina felt cold despite the warm night. My parents were not part of your world. Sometimes, innocent people get caught because they are near something valuable. A camera, a witness, a wrong place. Nina hated how calmly he said it. She hated more that he was not being cruel. He was being truthful. The next morning, Matteo laughed. It was small, more breath than sound, but Nina heard it from the hallway and ran like the house was on fire. She found him in the kitchen, sitting at a marble island, watching Luca try to make pancakes shaped like dinosaurs. Maria stood by the stove with the expression of a woman, allowing disaster for emotional reasons. One pancake looked like a shoe. Another looked like a turtle that had lost a fight. Matteo covered his mouth, shoulders shaking. Luca looked offended. That is clearly a stegosaurus. Maria sniffed. It is clearly evidence that men should not touch batter. Nina stood in the doorway and felt something inside her loosen. Not heal, not yet, but loosen. Matteo saw her and pointed at the plate. He did not speak, but his eyes were bright. Luca turned. Good morning. Nina crossed her arms. Are you poisoning my brother? Only visually. Good. She sat beside Matteo. For a few minutes, life became almost normal. Pancakes, coffee, Maria pretending not to smile. Luca explaining why triceratops were underrated. Matteo listening like every word mattered. Then Dom entered the kitchen and handed Luca a phone. Luca's face changed before he even answered. The boss returned. Where? He said. Silence. Send it to me. He hung up. Nina knew. Peace had a short leash in that house. Luca turned the phone toward her. On the screen was a photo of Matteo, taken through the garden fence that morning. Below it was a message. Cute kid. Does he scream? Or is he quiet like the dead? Nina's blood went cold. Matteo kept chewing his pancake, unaware. Luca's hand tightened around the phone until Nina thought it might crack. No, she said softly. He looked at her. No what? Do not become whatever that message wants you to become. They threatened a child. I know. My child died because I was not ruthless enough. No, Nina said, standing now. Your child died because evil men made evil choices. Do not give them your soul too. Luca stared at her. She expected anger. Instead, she saw fear, raw and old. I do not know how to protect without destroying, he said. Nina's voice softened. Then learn. And maybe that was the first moment they truly began. Not with desire, not with a kiss, but with a command that sounded like mercy. Learn that afternoon, while Matteo napped under Maria's careful watch. Nina walked through the estate and found a locked door near the end of the west corridor. The door was old, darker than the others, with a brass keyhole polished by years of use. She should have walked away, but on a small table beside it sat a framed photograph. Luca, Isabella, a little boy with dark curls and a dinosaur shirt. And behind them, half out of frame, Detective Kane stood beside Angelo Moretti, smiling like a family friend. Nina stared until the hallway blurred. Maria found her there. The older woman did not look surprised. Some photographs should have been burned, Maria said. Why wasn't it? Because grief makes museums out of rooms. Nina touched the frame. Did Luca know Kane was close to Angelo? Maria's mouth tightened. Mr. Luca knew many things too late. What is behind that door? Maria hesitated. The room where Mrs. Isabella kept her papers. Can I see it? No, the answer was gentle, but final. Why? Because Mr. Luca has not opened that room since she died. Nina stepped back. Another secret. Another locked door. That night, she looked at Luca differently. Not with less trust. With less innocence. He noticed. Dangerous men always notice shifts in the room. What did you find? He asked. Nina did not pretend. A photograph. You, Isabella, Marco, Kane, Angelo. His face closed. Where west corridor. Luca went still. Maria should have put it away. That is what you care about. No, did you know? Kane was connected to Angelo before the diner. I suspected. And you did not tell me. He looked down. I did not know how much. Nina gave a small, bitter laugh. That is a very careful answer. It is the truth. No, it is the part of the truth you think I can survive. Luca flinched. Nina, do not do that. Do not decide what I can carry. I have been carrying more than you can imagine, since I buried my parents, and became a mother to a child who wakes up afraid of sounds he cannot explain. Her voice shook, but she did not stop. If my parents died because of your world, I need to know. If Kane is involved, I need to know. If you brought us here and still kept secrets, then this place is just a prettier cage. Luca's face changed. The words hit him where she meant them to. He looked toward the closed hallway, then back at her. Tomorrow, he said, I will open Isabella's room. Why tomorrow? Because tonight, if I open it, I may not be able to stay the man you asked me to become. Nina stared at him. That answer scared her. It also sounded honest. Then tomorrow, she said, but no more locked doors. He nodded. No more locked doors. In the morning, the west corridor smelled of dust and old flowers. Luca stood before the locked door, with the key in his palm. His hand shook once before he forced it still. Nina saw it. She said nothing. Some battles deserved silence. When the door opened, the room inside looked untouched by time. A desk by the window. Bookshelves. A cream sweater over the back of a chair. A vase of dried roses that had gone brown years ago. On the desk sat a leather folder. Luca did not move toward it. Nina did. May I? She asked. He nodded. Inside were copies of shipment invoices, names, dates, and handwritten notes in a woman's neat script. Isabella had been investigating Angelo, not casually, not emotionally, carefully, like someone building a case. On the last page, one sentence had been underlined twice. Kane is the bridge. Nina looked up. She knew Luca's eyes were fixed on the page. And I did not listen. Did she tell you? She tried. His voice was rough. I told her Angela was grieving. That family business was complicated. That I would handle it. He laughed once. Empty and ugly. Men like me love saying, we will handle things. It makes us feel useful while women do the dangerous work of noticing the truth. Nina's anger softened. Not into forgiveness yet, but into understanding. Then we finish what she started. Luca looked at her. We, yes, Nina said. We. But we do it in a way that lets Matteo grow up, without thinking love is measured by how many bodies fall for it. Luca closed the folder slowly. I do not know if I can do that. I know, she stepped closer. But I am asking you to try before I ask myself to trust you. That was when his phone buzzed. Unknown number. A photo appeared. Mrs. Chen outside the grocery store. Alone, the next message came 1 second later. Old women should not walk without guards. Then a third. Neither should little boys. Nina ran for Mateo's room. He was there, safe, playing with dinosaurs on the rug. But, on the window, taped from the outside, was a small black card with a silver M. Moretti had reached the house. Not inside. Not yet, but close enough. Luca looked at the card and said nothing. That silence was more frightening than rage. Nina stood beside him. Learn, she whispered again. This time, it sounded less like mercy, more like a warning. The days that followed did not become peaceful. They became careful. There is a difference. Peace is when you sleep without counting exits. Careful is when you laugh at breakfast, while 3 armed men watch the garden from behind bulletproof glass. Peace is when a child plays because he wants to. Careful is when that same child plays because the adults have promised the bad men cannot reach the window. Nina learned the shape of careful quickly. She learned the path from Mateo's room to the safe room. She learned which windows faced the street and which faced the inner courtyard. She learned that Dom liked to stand where he could see every reflection. She learned that Maria carried a small alarm button in her apron pocket and that she had once hidden Isabella in the pantry during a family dispute that had almost turned violent. This house has always had beautiful walls and ugly secrets. Maria said one evening while kneading dough in the kitchen. Mrs. Isabella used to say, the chandelier was too bright for a place with so much darkness. Nina dried a plate and looked toward the hallway. Did she want Luca to leave it? Yes. Did he listen? Maria sighed. He loved her, but loving someone is not the same as hearing them. That sentence stayed with Nina. It followed her into the garden. It followed her up the stairs. It followed her when Luca asked if she wanted extra guards outside Mateo's room, and she said, I want you to ask what makes him feel safe, not decide for him. Luca paused. Then he went to Mateo, knelt beside his bed, and asked. Mateo thought for a long time. Then he pointed to the hallway and wrote on his notepad, light on, not guards. Luca read it. You want the hallway light on. Mateo nodded. Done. Then Mateo wrote again. Door open little. Luca looked at Nina. Door open a little. He said, done. It was such a small thing. But Nina saw Luca learn something in that moment. Protection was not always a wall. Sometimes it was a light left on, because a child asked for it. Sometimes it was an open door. Sometimes it was not standing over someone, but standing nearby. That night, Mateo slept 6 hours without waking. Nina cried in the bathroom, where no one could see. Except Luca did see. He did not enter. He stood outside the door and asked softly, Do you want me to go? She wiped her face. No. Do you want me to come in? She stared at her reflection. Tired eyes. Wet cheeks. A woman who had survived too much by pretending she did not need anyone. Yes, she whispered. Luca opened the door slowly. He did not touch her until she reached for him. Then he held her as if she might break, but not as if she were weak. There was a difference there, too. I am so tired, she said into his shirt. I know. No, you do not. You are tired like a man who has fought wars. I am tired like a woman who has had to smile while drowning. Luca's arms tightened. Tell me how to help. Do not rescue me from everything. That is not usually how people ask for help. I am not asking usually. He gave a quiet breath that might have been a laugh. Then, what are you asking? Stand with me. Not in front of me all the time. Not behind me. With me. Luca was silent for a long moment. I can try. That is the only honest answer. She leaned back and looked at him. The bathroom light was unkind. It showed the bruise still yellowing near his jaw, the cut healing over his eyebrow, the tired shadows under his eyes. He looked powerful to everyone else. To Nina, in that moment, he looked human. Did Isabella ask you for that? She said. To stand with her. Luca closed his eyes. Yes, and you did not know how. No, then do not waste what she tried to teach you. The words hurt him. She saw that. But he did not pull away. I will not, he said. It was not a romantic promise. It was better. It was a vow made in a bathroom, under ugly light, between two people who had stopped pretending healing was soft. A week passed, then another. Nina did not leave the estate often. When she did, Dom followed, and she let him, because courage did not mean ignoring danger. She went to Mateo's school once to speak with the counselor. The woman, kind but overworked, kept using phrases like developmental delay and selective mutism and potential interventions. Nina listened. Then she said, He is not a project. He is a child who saw something terrible. Help him feel safe. Do not make him perform recovery for adults. The counselor blinked. then softened. You are right, she said. Thank you for saying it that way. Nina left feeling strange. For years, she had feared officials, teachers, counselors, caseworkers, people with forms, people with clipboards, people who could decide she was not enough. Speaking to one without apologizing felt like stepping into sunlight after years underground. Luca waited in the car. How did it go? I did not cry. That is the standard. Today, yes. Then I am proud of you. She glanced at him. Do not say that like you are rewarding me. I am saying it like someone who means it. She looked out the window so he would not see her smile. On the way back, they passed the street where Kowalski's diner sat. Nina asked him to slow down. The sign flickered. A man smoked near the back door. The window booth where Luca had sat was empty. Do you ever think about that morning? Luca asked. Every day. Do you regret it? Nina watched the rain bead on the glass. Sometimes. He did not answer. That mattered. He did not demand to be her miracle. He let the truth be complicated. And sometimes, she said. I think it was the first brave thing I did for myself. Even though I thought I was doing it for you. How? Because I proved Cain did not own every room he walked into. Luca looked at her then. No, he did not. The next day, Angelo sent flowers. White lilies. Beautiful. Funeral flowers. They arrived with a note addressed not to Luca, but to Nina. For the woman teaching a dead man to breathe. Be careful. Sometimes the dead pull the living down with them. Luca read it once and went very still. Nina took the card from his hand. He wants me to fear loving you. You should. I do. That startled him. Nina, I am afraid every day. But fear is not the same as surrender. She walked to the fireplace and burned the note herself. Then she looked at Luca over the flames. What frightens you more? Losing me, or being known by me? He looked away. There it was. The second fear, deeper than bullets, more humiliating than scars. Being known, he said. Because if you see everything, you might decide I am not worth saving. Nina walked back to him. I am not here to save you. His eyes flicked to hers. Then what are you here for? To see if you are willing to save yourself. That night, Luca took her to the estate chapel, a small room at the back of the property, built by his great-grandmother. He had not entered it in years. Dust covered the pews. A candle rack stood empty near a statue of Mary. I used to come here after Isabella died, he said, to pray, to bargain, with God, with guilt. Nina sat beside him. Did it answer? Every day. What did it say? Luca looked at his hands. That if I had been stronger, they would be alive. Nina let the silence stretch. Then she said, guilt is arrogant. He looked at her, startled. What? It makes you the center of everything. Your failure, your weakness, your fault. Sometimes guilt is just grief trying to feel powerful. Luca stared at the floor. He looked angry for a moment, then devastated, then tired. If I let go of guilt, what is left? Love, Nina said, and responsibility. Real responsibility, not punishment. What is the difference? Punishment keeps you chained to who you were. Responsibility asks what you will do next. Luca bowed his head. Nina did not touch him. This was his work. She could sit beside him, but she could not do it for him. After a while, he said, I want out. Say exactly what that means. The business, the violence, the debt books, the men who smile because they fear me. I want out. Can you get out? He breathed once, not cleanly, then start honestly. He looked at her. You make impossible things sound like chores. That is because I have raised a child on tips. Impossible things become chores if you do them every day. For the first time inside that chapel, Luca laughed. It echoed small and fragile against the dusty walls. Then he reached for her hand. She let him. Outside, the estate remained guarded. Moretti still moved in the city. Cain still wore a badge. Matteo still woke from nightmares. Nothing had been solved. But something had shifted. Luca was no longer asking how to win the war. He was beginning to ask what kind of man would be left if he did. The investigation into Nina S. Parents began with a box of old papers and ended with Matteo writing one word. That changed everything. Luca did not let his people storm police stations or threaten clerks. Not at first. Nina insisted on doing things properly where they could. She said if they wanted a real future, they could not build it entirely out of fear. So Dom found a retired accident reconstruction expert who owed Luca no favors and had no reason to lie. Maria called a lawyer she trusted from a charity board. Her name was Elise Grant, and she entered the Romano estate wearing a navy suit, practical shoes, and the expression of a woman who had spent 20 years telling powerful men to sit down. Nina liked her before she spoke. Elise listened to the story without interrupting. Then she looked at Luca. If you want a murder solved, you usually call police. Luca said nothing. Elise looked at Nina. If you want the truth protected from police, you call someone like me. Nina requested the old police report through official channels, though her hands shook when she signed the form. She was not naive. She knew justice was not equally available to everyone. Poor people were often asked to be patient, while powerful people buried the truth. But she also believed that if Matteo ever learned what happened, he deserved more than revenge. He deserved a record, a fact. A world where someone wrote down that his parents had mattered. The first report came back thin, too thin. Weather conditions, loss of control, no second vehicle, no usable traffic camera, officer on scene, Detective Riley Kane. Nina sat in Luca's study with the file open on the desk and felt the room tilt. He was there, she said. Luca stood behind the desk, silent. Dom leaned against the wall, arms still crossed. Elise adjusted her glasses. Files disappear all the time, Elise said, but they usually leave fingerprints. Someone requested the traffic camera footage the night of the accident. It was logged, then the entry was deleted. Can you recover it? Nina asked. Maybe, if it still exists. And if it does not? Elise looked at Luca, then back at Nina. Then we find who deleted it. Luca's voice was flat. Kane, probably, Elise said. Probably's is not a conviction. Nina looked at Luca when she said it. He understood. His jaw worked once. But he said nothing. That was progress. A month earlier, maybe he would have solved the problem. With a gun in a dark room. Now he was standing still because Nina had asked him to. Healing did not always look soft. Sometimes it looked like a violent man, choosing not to move. Later that day, Nina found Matteo in Marco's old room. He sat on the floor, with two dinosaur figures facing each other, one triceratops, one tyrannosaurus. He moved them slowly, not playing so much as arranging a memory. Nina sat beside him. Buddy, she said. Can I ask you something hard? Matteo's shoulders went tight. You do not have to answer out loud. You can write, or you can point, or you can say no. He looked at her. Do you remember the night of the accident? His face emptied. That frightened Nina more than tears would have. She reached for him, but he pulled away and grabbed a pencil from the floor. On a piece of paper, he wrote one word. Car. Nina stopped breathing. Another car. Matteo did not move. Then he nodded, slow, tiny, a nod that carried 8 months of silence. Nina covered her mouth. She wanted to cry. She wanted to scream. She wanted to run downstairs and put that paper in Luca's hands unlike a weapon. Instead, she sat very still. What color? Matteo gripped the pencil so hard the tip broke. He wrote again, black. Then he pressed both hands over his ears and rocked forward. Nina pulled him close. This time he let her. No more, she whispered. No more today. She held him while he shook. And for the first time she understood that memory was not always a story. Sometimes it was a sound trapped in the body. A flash of headlights. A smell of burnt rubber. A child's last view of his parents' faces. Downstairs. When Nina showed Luca the paper, something terrible moved through his eyes. Black car, he said. Moretti uses black Lincolns. So half the rich men in Chicago. Kane drove one off duty. Do not do that, Nina said. Do not jump from clue to execution. I am not, your face says otherwise. He looked at the paper again. His voice dropped. If Kane was there, if he hurt your family too, then we prove it. And if proof is not enough, Nina stepped closer. Then we keep trying until it is. That is what decent people do. Luca gave a short, humorless laugh. Decent people get buried. No, she said. Decent people get tired. Then they find each other. The words surprised them both. The room went quiet. Dom suddenly became very interested in the window. Luca looked at Nina, like she had touched a wound and a prayer at the same time. That evening, Nina went to the garden alone. The roses were heavy with rain. She sat on the marble bench and tried to breathe through the pressure in her chest. She had spent 8 months blaming herself for not being in the car. If she had not taken that extra shift, if she had been home, if she had answered her mother's last call. Grief loved the word if. It built houses out of it. Luca found her there after sunset. He did not sit until she nodded. I missed their call, she said. My mother called me 20 minutes before the accident. I was carrying plates. I thought I would call back after the rush. Luca listened. That was one of the things she was beginning to trust about him. He did not rush to fix words that needed to be spoken. I called back after, Nina said. A paramedic answered. Her voice broke. She hated that. She covered her face. Matteo lost his parents, and then he lost his voice. And I have been so busy, trying to keep food in the fridge that I never had time to fall apart. Luca's hand rested on the bench between them. not touching her, offering. Nina looked at it for a long time before she placed her hand over his. His fingers closed slowly around hers. I missed Marco's play, Luca said. He was a tree. Not even a speaking part. He had one cardboard leaf. He was so proud. I told him I would be there. I was not. Nina looked at him. Is that why you kept his room? I thought if I changed it. I was admitting he was gone. And now he watched the dark garden. Now Matteo sleeps there. And I hate that it brings me comfort. It feels like betrayal. Nina squeezed his hand. Love is not a room with only one chair. He turned toward her. Where did you learn to say things like that? Poverty, she said, and waitressing. People tell you everything when they think you are furniture. He laughed softly. The sound was rare. It made him look younger. For a moment they were not a mafia boss and a waitress hiding from a war. They were just two tired people sitting beside their ghosts. Matteo's healing came in small pieces after that. He did not suddenly speak, because Luca made pancakes or because Nina loved him hard enough. Trauma was not a locked door opened by one magic key. It was a hallway. Some days he took one step. Some days he sat down and refused to move. Luca seemed to understand that without being told. He never demanded words. He offered choices. Apple juice or milk, garden or library, triceratops or stegosaurus. When Matteo pointed, Luca accepted it as language. When Matteo wrote, Luca read every word seriously. When Matteo stayed silent, Luca sat nearby and let silence be safe. That mattered. One afternoon, Luca took Matteo to the estate garage, a place Nina had avoided because every car in it looked expensive enough to feed a neighborhood. Matteo stopped before an old black Lincoln covered in dust. His face went white. Nina reached for him. But he pointed, not at the car, at the broken right headlight. Luca crouched beside him. You have seen one like this. Matteo nodded. Then, after a long silence, he whispered, bad car. Nina's knees weakened. Luca closed his eyes for 1 second. Okay, he said gently. Thank you for telling me. Not good boy. Not you are brave. Thank you. Like Matteo had given something valuable. That night, Elise found the first real crack. A junkyard receipt from 3 days after the accident. A black Lincoln, front-end damage, paid in cash, processed under a shell company tied to a Moretti restaurant. The signature was not Kane S. It was Angelo Moretti's nephew. It was not enough. But it was something. Enough to make Angelo move. He did not send men first. He sent gifts. A box arrived at the front gate addressed to Matteo. Security scanned it. No explosive. No poison. Inside was a toy dinosaur. A triceratops. Around its neck was a tiny strip of red ribbon. Beneath it, a note written in elegant black ink. Children should not remember what adults paid to forget. Nina wanted to burn it. Luca wanted to find Angelo that night. Instead, Nina took the toy outside, placed it on the stone path, and crushed it under her heel while Luca watched. That is what we do with threats in this family, she said. We do not keep them. We do not fear them. We name them, and we remove them. Luca looked at her for a long moment. This family. Nina's breath caught. She had not meant to say it. Or maybe she had, before she could answer. Matteo appeared in the doorway and slipped his hand into Luca's. Mr. Luca, he whispered. Luca froze like a man afraid to scare away a bird. Yes, buddy. Matteo looked at the broken toy. Then, at Nina. Can we get a real dog? Nina blinked. Luca stared. Then, against all reason, all danger, all the darkness pressing against the gates, they laughed. And the sound carried through the house, like something being repaired. But peace did not last. 2 days later, Nina insisted on going back to the city to pick up Matteo's school records, her parents' old storage key, and the rest of her documents. Luca wanted to send Dom. Nina refused. I am not a package to be moved by guards, she said. My life is mine, even when it is dangerous. Luca looked like he wanted to argue. He did not. He sent Dom anyway, but from a distance. Nina noticed and said nothing, because boundaries were not the same as stupidity. She went to the school first. Matteo's teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, cried when Nina told her Matteo had spoken a few words. Do not rush him, Nina said. Please, do not turn his voice into a performance. Mrs. Rodriguez nodded and promised. It was a small moment, but important. Children were not miracles for adults to clap at. They were people. They needed dignity, not pressure. From the school, Nina walked to the small storage facility where her parents had kept old tools, holiday decorations, and boxes they had never unpacked after moving. The unit smelled like dust and motor oil. Her father's toolbox sat near the back. She ran her fingers over the scratched handle and almost lost her breath. Inside was a folded photo of her parents and Matteo at a picnic. Behind it, taped to the metal lid, was a tiny memory card. Nina stared at it. Her hands went cold. She did not know what was on it, but she knew her father. He hid spare keys in coffee cans and cash inside old socks. If he had taped something under a toolbox lid, he had meant for it to be found by someone who knew him. Her phone buzzed. "Luca, are you still at the storage unit?" he asked. "Yes." "Leave now." His voice was controlled. Too controlled. "Why, Dom lost eyes on a black SUV 2 blocks from you." Nina slipped the memory card into her bra. "I am leaving." She reached the hallway and froze. At the end stood a man in a beautiful charcoal coat. Holding a black umbrella, though they were indoors. Silver hair, thin smile, elegant as a knife. "Angelo Moretti, Miss Torres," he said. "You are much smaller than the trouble you cause." Nina's hand tightened around her keys. "Move." Angelo smiled wider. "That is the problem with people who have never had power. The first time they feel brave, they mistake it for authority, and powerful men mistake cruelty for importance." His eyes sharpened, just slightly. She had touched pride. Good. Pride made men careless. "Luca has developed strange taste," Angelo said. "A waitress, a mute child, a dead mechanic's daughter. Sentimental, really." Nina stepped backward. "My father had a name. Daniel," Angelo said at once. Nina stopped. "Yes, Daniel Torres. Good mechanic. Bad instincts. He found something in a car he should have ignored." Nina felt the hallway tilt. "What car?" Angelo's smile returned. "Ask your brother. Children remember more than they can say." A door slammed open behind Nina. Dom, gun drawn. "Step away from her." Angelo lifted his hands in mock surrender. "Relax, if I wanted her dead, she would be." He looked back at Nina. "Tell Luca I will be in touch. And tell the boy I still remember his eyes in the back seat." Nina lunged without thinking. Dom caught her around the waist as Angelo disappeared through the side exit. "Let me go." "No," Dom said. "Not when you are about to chase the devil with car keys." Nina shook with rage. Not fear now. Rage, at the estate. Luca saw her face and knew something had happened before she spoke. "He approached you. He knew my father's name." Luca closed his eyes. "Nina, no." She pulled out the memory card. "My father hid this. If it proves what Angelo did, we use it. Legally, publicly, permanently." Elise took the card with gloved hands. "I will make copies before opening it." Luca looked at Nina. "He got close to you because I let you go." "No. He got close because he is a predator. Do not turn his choice into your guilt." Luca looked at her like that. Thought had never occurred to him. Guilt had become his religion. Nina was asking him to leave the church. That night, Luca stood outside Matteo's room long after the boy fell asleep. Nina joined him. "You want to run," she said. "With you both. Somewhere far. Would it work?" "For a while. And then men like Angelo do not forget." Nina leaned against the door frame. "Then we stop running, but we do it without becoming him." Luca looked through the crack in the door, at Matteo curled under the blanket. "I used to think the only way to keep family safe was to make everyone afraid of losing to me." "Did it work?" His voice broke in the smallest way. "No," Nina took his hand. "Then try something harder." "What is harder than fear?" "Trust." He looked at their joined hands. "I am not good at that." "Neither am I." "Then we will be terrible together." She smiled despite everything. "That sounds about right." For one breath, he leaned closer. She felt it. The pull, the warmth, the danger. Then she stepped back. "Not yet," she said softly. He stopped immediately. No wounded pride, no pressure, just a nod. Not yet. That moment mattered more than a kiss. Nina went to bed with her heart aching, not because he had touched her, but because he had not when she asked him not to. Respect, she was learning, could be more intimate than desire. The next morning, Elise opened the memory card. On it was a corrupted video file, partially recovered. The image shook. A mechanic-esque garage. Her father's voice, low and frightened. Then another voice. "Kane, you should have given it to Mr. Moretti." Her mother crying in the background. A car door slamming. Static. Then one clear sentence from Angelo himself. "No witnesses means no children either." Nina gripped the desk until her knuckles went white. Matteo, playing in the hall, heard the voice. He dropped his dinosaur. His face went empty again. Nina ran to him. He covered his ears. But this time, after a long trembling moment, he whispered, "I saw him." Luca knelt across from him, far enough not to crowd him. "Kane." Matteo shook his head. Tears fell. "The silver man." "Angelo." The room seemed to stop breathing. Matteo had not only seen Kane, he had seen Angelo. That made him more than a witness. It made him a target no amount of gates could fully protect. Luca looked at Nina, and she saw the war inside him. Destroy, protect, run, stay, kill, learn. Nina held Matteo and spoke to Luca over the boy's head. We need help bigger than you. Federal. Luca said. Yes, that means exposing my businesses. Yes, all of them. The illegal ones. They are not separate that cleanly. Nina swallowed. This was the line. The real one. Not romance. Not attraction. Not a soft moment in a garden. The future was asking for payment. Then decide, she said. Do you want to be a boss? Or do you want to be free? Luca looked down at Matteo. The boy was shaking in Nina's arms. Free, he said. One word. Quiet. Terrifying. Honest, and for the first time, Nina believed him completely. The first federal meeting happened in a hotel conference room that smelled like coffee, carpet cleaner, and distrust. Elise insisted on neutral ground. Luca insisted on sweeping the room first. The prosecutor, Aaron Bell, was a tired-looking man with rolled-up sleeves and eyes that had seen enough corruption to stop being shocked by it. He came with 2 agents, a recorder, and a promise that sounded careful enough to be real. If you want immunity for everything, this meeting is over, Bell said to Luca. Luca sat at the far end of the table, hands folded. I do not want immunity for everything. Nina looked at him. That answer cost him something. She heard it. Bell did too. Then what do you want? Protection for the child. Protection for Nina. Protection for Mrs. Chen and Maria. A legal path to dismantle what belongs to me without handing it to men worse than me. Bell studied him. That sounds noble. It is practical. Practical men usually ask what prison time they can avoid. Luca did not blink. I am not asking to avoid consequences. I am asking to choose useful ones. Nina felt her throat tighten. Useful consequences. Responsibility. Not punishment. He had listened. Bell leaned back. You understand that once you cooperate, everyone who made money through you becomes your enemy. Luca's mouth curved without humor. Many already were. And if your testimony implicates public officials, then they should have chosen cleaner friends. For the first time, Bell almost smiled. Then he turned to Nina. Ms. Torres, you understand what this means for you and your brother. Public cases are not gentle. Defense lawyers will question his memory. They will question your motives. They will question your relationship with Mr. Romano. They can question me, Nina said. But they do not get to turn Matteo into a battlefield. Bell nodded slowly. That is why we do this carefully. A child trauma specialist. Recorded testimony only if the court approves. No repeated interviews unless necessary. His welfare comes first. Nina looked at Elise. Elise nodded. That is the right framework. Luca looked at Bell. If anyone leaks his name, do not threaten me in my meeting, Bell said. Luca went still. Nina placed a hand over his. He is not threatening, she said. He is afraid. Bella's expression changed. Not softened exactly. Clarified. We all are, the prosecutor said. If we are not paying attention. The meeting lasted 3 hours. Luca gave names. Not all, enough to start. Enough to prove he meant it. Nina watched him turn pieces of his old life into evidence. Warehouses. Shell companies. Judges who accepted gifts. Police supervisors who looked away. Truck routes that carried more than imported wine. Men he had once protected. Men who would not forgive him. Each name made the room colder. By the time they left, Luca looked pale. In the car, he said nothing. Nina did not fill the silence. After 20 minutes, he pulled over near the lake. Rain moved across the water in silver sheets. He got out. She followed. Dom's car stopped behind them, far enough to pretend privacy. I thought I would feel lighter, Luca said. You opened a wound. That does not feel light. Some of those men have children. So did your victims. He flinched. Nina did not apologize. Some truths were cruel, only because lies had been comfortable. Do you hate me? He asked. She looked at the lake. No, do you want to? Sometimes. That answer hurt him more than hatred would have, but it was honest. He nodded. Thank you for telling me. Do not thank me yet. She turned to him. There may be days when I cannot stand what you were. There may be days when Matteo asks questions I do not know how to answer. There may be days when your past walks right into our kitchen and sits down between us. And then we tell the truth. Age appropriate, human, no excuses. Luca looked at the water. I can do that. Can you? I can learn. Nina smiled a little. Good answer. He reached for her hand, slowly enough that she could refuse. She did not. The lake was gray. The city behind them was dangerous. Their future was uncertain. But for the first time, uncertainty did not feel like falling. It felt like walking in the dark, with someone who had agreed not to lie about the dark. That night, Matteo had a nightmare. Not the quiet kind, the old kind. He woke screaming, the word car breaking over and over in his throat. Nina ran to him. Luca reached the doorway and stopped, remembering. Ask, do not assume. Matteo, he said softly. Do you want me here? Matteo sobbed and reached for him. Luca crossed the room in 2 strides and sat on the floor beside the bed, not on it, not crowding him. Nina held Matteo against her chest. Luca talked about dinosaurs. Not feelings, not bravery, dinosaurs. He told Matteo that some dinosaurs were fast, some were armored, and some survived by staying very still until danger passed. Still is a kind of smart, Luca said. Quiet is a kind of smart too. But now you are safe enough to choose. Quiet or loud. Both are yours. Matteo's crying slowed. I was quiet because he said no witnesses. Nina closed her eyes. Luca's face hardened, then softened by force. You were quiet because your body protected you, Luca said. That was not weakness. That was survival. Matteo sniffed. I want to be loud now. Nina kissed his hair. Then be loud when you are ready. Will loud make bad men come? Sometimes. Luca said honestly. Nina looked at him sharply. He continued. But loud also brings good people. That is why we do not do it alone. Matteo looked between them. Are we alone? No, Nina said. Never again. The next morning, Matteo placed his dinosaur figures in a circle around the breakfast plates. Maria asked if they were guarding the pancakes. Matteo said, yes. One word. Simple. Clear. Everyone froze for half a second. Then Maria, wise woman, only nodded and said, good. These pancakes need protection from Mr. Luca. Matteo smiled. Luca pretended to be offended. Nina turned away to hide tears. Healing, she realized, often arrived disguised as an ordinary breakfast. Mrs. Chen was taken on a Thursday morning outside a small grocery store, where she bought ginger candy and cheap tea. The kidnappers did not make noise. That was how professionals worked. 1 black van, 2 men, a hand over her mouth. Her shopping bag split on the sidewalk. Oranges rolling into the gutter. By noon, a video arrived on Luca's phone. Mrs. Chen sat tied to a chair in a kitchen that looked like it belonged to an old restaurant. Her glasses were crooked. There was a bruise on her cheek. She tried to look brave, but Nina saw her hands shaking. Angelo Moretti appeared behind her in a dark suit, silver hair combed back, face calm as a priest at a funeral. He did not shout. That made him worse. Mr. Romano, he said. You have something that belongs to me. A witness. A woman. A child with a broken memory. Bring yourself to St. Bartholomew's at midnight. Come alone. Mrs. Chen goes home. Refuse. And I begin teaching Miss Torres what happens when poor women forget their place. Nina watched the video twice. The first time with horror, the second with rage. He thinks I am weak because I am poor, she said. Luca was already reaching for his phone. Dom, no, Nina said. He stopped. No, if you go in with guns, people die. Maybe Mrs. Chen, maybe you. Maybe Matteo loses the first man he has trusted since my father. Luca's eyes were hard. Angelo took an old woman to force my hand. Yes, because he knows your hand. He knows you will come like a storm. He built the trap for that. Dom entered with 2 security men behind him. Boss, we can have a team ready in 20 minutes. Luca looked at Nina. She looked back. It was not defiance. It was pleading with teeth. You said you wanted out, she said. This is where you prove it. You want me to negotiate. I want you to think. Thinking does not save hostages. Neither does pride. The room went deadly quiet. Dom looked away. Luca stepped closer. You think this is pride. I think part of it is protection. I think part of it is revenge. And I think Angelo is counting on you not knowing the difference. That landed. Nina saw it. Luca turned from her and pressed the hands to the desk. For a few seconds he looked less like a boss than a man carrying a weight no one else could lift. If I do nothing, he hurts her. We will not do nothing. Nina turned to Elise. Can we use Kane? Elise frowned. If Kane is connected to the accident and Moretti, we need a confession or records. Then we get one. Luca looked at her. How? Nina's voice shook, but she kept going. Kane wants Matteo. He wants to erase the witness. He also thinks I am scared and stupid. So let him think that. Luca understood before she finished. His face hardened. No, you do not even know the plan. If it involves using you as bait. No, you do not own my courage. Luca, I am trying to keep you alive. Then trust me to help. Matteo stood in the doorway. Nobody had seen him come in. His face was pale, but his voice came out clear enough to break every heart in the room. I saw him. Nina turned slowly. Matteo, he clutched the doorframe. The bad car. The policeman. He got out. Mommy was crying. Nina felt the world go quiet. Luca moved first, but he did not rush the boy. He lowered himself to one knee several feet away. You do not have to say more. Matteo shook his head. Tears slid down his face, but he spoke again. He said no witnesses. Nina covered her mouth. The words had lived inside him for 8 months. Poison in a child's throat. Luca's face changed into something Nina had never seen. Not rage, not only rage. Grief. Horror. A promise. Elise took one careful step forward. Matteo, sweetheart, would you be willing to tell that to someone who can help put him away? Matteo looked at Nina. Nina wanted to say no. She wanted to put him in bed and shut every door between him and the world. But healing was not hiding forever. Justice had a cost too. She knelt and held out her hands. Only if you want to, she said. Only if you feel safe. Matteo looked at Luca. Will he come back? Kane, Luca asked. Matteo nodded. Luca's voice was low. Not if we do this right. That night, they made a plan. Not a clean plan. There was no such thing. A realistic plan is just fear with structure. Elise contacted Aaron Bell again. Dom arranged surveillance. Maria took Matteo to a safe room under the East Wing. A room built decades earlier by paranoid rich men, and now used to protect a traumatized child. Nina agreed to meet Kane in a public place first. Then panic and offer to bring Matteo if Kane promised to protect her from Luca. Every word would be recorded. Every step watched. Luca hated it. He hated it so much he could barely look at her. Before she left, he found her in the hallway outside Matteo's room. Do not ask me to be calm, he said. I was not going to. If he touches you, then I will survive long enough to yell at you for doubting me. His mouth almost smiled. Almost. Then he touched her face. Gently, with the backs of his fingers. I love you, he said. It came out raw, unplanned. Nina's breath caught. For a second, all the danger fell away. That is terrible timing. I know. Say it again when nobody is being kidnapped. I will. She leaned into his hand. I love you too. His eyes closed for half a second, as if the words hurt, because he wanted them so badly. Then he stepped back. Come home. I am trying to make sure we have one. The meeting with Kane happened in a church basement, where a community group served free dinners twice a week. Nina chose it because Kane would feel safe there. Men like him loved places full of powerless people. He arrived in plain clothes and sat across from her, at a folding table beneath fluorescent lights. You look tired, he said. You look corrupt, she said. His smile thinned. Careful. Nina let her hands shake. That part was not acting. Moretti took Mrs. Chen. Kane leaned back. That is unfortunate. I need protection. From Luca. From everyone. Where is the boy? Nina looked down. Safe. Kane's eyes sharpened. He is not safe with Romano. He remembered something. Nina whispered. Kane stopped moving. There. A crack. Kids imagine things. He remembered the accident. Kane's face remained calm, but his right hand curled into a fist under the table. What accident? My parents. Nina forced tears into her voice because the real ones were too dangerous. He said there was a black car. Kane leaned forward. Listen to me very carefully. Trauma creates false memories. He said you were there. Silence. Not long. But enough. Kane's eyes went flat. You should not have said that. Nina's heart pounded so hard, she could barely hear the tiny recorder taped beneath the table. Were you? Kane smiled slowly. Shafi, your parents should have handed over the dash drive when they were told. Good people die every day, because they think being good protects them. Nina felt nausea rise. Her parents. Not accident, not rain, murder. You killed them. No, Kane said. The road killed them. I just made sure the report understood that. Nina stood too quickly, knocking the chair back. Kane grabbed her wrist. Where is the boy? Before Nina could answer, the lights went out. Screams rose from the far end of the basement. Kane pulled a gun. Damas men moved from the crowd. Too late, Moretti had anticipated the trap. A black van smashed through the side service entrance above them, shaking dust from the ceiling. Men shouted. People ran. Kane dragged Nina toward the stairs, gun pressed against her ribs. Plans, he hissed in her ear, are for people with power. Nina drove her heel into his foot and twisted hard. Pain shot up her arm as he tightened his grip, but she got one breath. One scream. Dom. Gunfire cracked above. Not wild, controlled, terrifying. Kane shoved Nina into a storage room and locked the door from inside. Call Romano, he snapped. Tell him to bring the boy. Nina backed away. The room smelled of bleach and old soup. Her wrist throbbed. No, Kane lifted the gun. You think I will not shoot you? Nina's voice shook. I think you have been shooting people who cannot fight back for a long time. His face darkened. He stepped toward her. Then his phone buzzed. He looked down. A message. His expression changed. Nina saw fear. Real fear. What? She whispered. Kane did not answer. The storage room door exploded inward. Luca stood in the doorway, gun raised, blood on his collar, eyes locked on Kane. Let her go. Kane grabbed Nina and put the gun under her jaw. I will kill her. Luca went still. No, you will not. You do not know that. I know men like you, Luca said. You kill from behind paperwork, from behind badges, from behind children. But when someone looks you in the eye, you shake. Kane did shake, just a little. Nina felt it. Outside, sirens wailed. Federal agents. Police who were not Kane's. Dom had gotten the recording out. Elise had sent it live to Belle the second Kane confessed. Kane understood. His power was bleeding away. He pressed the gun harder into Nina's skin. I can still take something from you. Luca's face became white with fear. Not for himself. For her, Nina saw the old Luca rising. The killer. The man who could end Kane with one perfect shot and call it justice. And maybe part of her wanted that. Then she thought of Matteo. Of a little boy learning that safety did not have to sound like gunfire. Nina whispered. Luca, his eyes flicked to hers. Not this way. Kane laughed. Listen to her. Even now she thinks decency matters. Luca's hand trembled, then lowered. Just slightly. Kane's attention shifted for half a second in disbelief. That was enough. Nina dropped her weight, slammed her elbow back into his ribs, and fell. Luca moved. Dom moved. Kane hit the floor under 3 men before he could fire. Luca reached Nina and pulled her into his arms. He was shaking harder than she was. I had the shot, he whispered. I know, I wanted to take it. I know, I did not. Nina held his face. That is why we still have a future. Mrs. Chen was found 2 hours later, in the basement of Moretti's old restaurant, alive, dehydrated, furious, and demanding to know who had stepped on her oranges. But Angelo was gone. Kane, handcuffed and pale, gave one last smile as agents dragged him past Nina. Angelo never needed me to win, he said. He only needed me to open the gate. Nina did not understand until Luca's phone rang. Maria's voice came through. Terrified. The estate had lost power. The cameras were down, and Matteo was missing. The Romano estate looked dead when Luca's convoy reached it. No garden lights, no glowing windows, just black stone and the flash of emergency strobes. Nina was out of the car before it fully stopped. Luca caught her arm. Stay behind me. Do not say that to me right now. He let go. That was how she knew he had changed. The old Luca would have commanded. This Luca understood that love without respect was only another cage. Dom's men swept the east wing. Maria was found in the pantry, bleeding from a cut on her forehead but alive. She was crying. Not from pain but fury. They took the boy, she said. He bit one of them. Good child. Nina gripped the door frame. The safe room had been opened from the outside. Someone had known the code. Someone inside Luca's world. Betrayal did not shout. It unlocked doors quietly. A guard named Renzo was missing. Luca's face went cold when Dom said the name. Find him. Alive. Dom asked. Luca looked at Nina. For a second. The old answer was there. Then he said, breathing. Nina did not have time to appreciate the difference. A video came in. Angelo Moretti stood in a private room above his restaurant. St. Bartholomew, Mew's church visible through the window behind him. Matteo sat in a chair beside him. Wrists tied but mouth uncovered. His face was pale. His eyes were wet. But he was alive. Angelo smiled. Mr. Romano, Miss Torres, I apologize for the drama. Children should not be out this late. Nina made a sound Luca never forgot. Not a scream. Something deeper, Angelo continued. The boy is unharmed. For now. Come to the church. No army, no federal friends. Bring the original dashcam drive. If you have found it, bring any records your lawyer has. Bring the woman too. Mothers make men honest. Luca's voice was very quiet. He is not getting you. Nina turned on him. He has Matteo. He will kill you. He will kill Matteo if we do nothing. I can go, he wants all of us. Dom came in with a laptop. Boss, we found Renzo's transfer records. Moretti paid him through a shell company. Also, Elise called. Kane is talking. He says Angelo kept evidence from the night Isabella died. Not just Nina's parents. Isabella too. Luca went still. What evidence? Dom looked at Nina before answering. A recording. Isabella found out Angelo was trafficking girls through restaurant supply shipments. She copied files. She planned to go to federal prosecutors. Kane helped Moretti silence her. Nina's father repaired one of the cars used that night. He found a dashcam card hidden under the seat. That is why Moretti had him killed. The room seemed to lose air. Nina gripped the back of a chair. Her father had not been involved in crime. He had been a mechanic, a tired man with grease under his nails, who sang badly while making eggs. He had found the wrong piece of truth. Her mother had died beside him because truth, in the hands of evil men, became a death sentence. Luca sat down slowly. Isabella was not collateral. His voice was almost empty. She was the target. Nina saw the 3 years of guilt shift inside him, not vanish. Guilt never vanished that cleanly, but it moved. It made room for something else. Rage, yes, but also grief with a name. Luca, she said, look at me. He did. We get Matteo back. We get the evidence out. We do not let Angelo turn all this pain into another pile of bodies. If he hurts him, then we stop him. Your way, our way. That word held them. Our, not his war. Not her tragedy. Their family. Their choice. Elise arrived 20 minutes later with Belle on a secure call and the recovered drive in a sealed evidence bag. It had been found in a storage unit rented years earlier under Nina's father's name. He had hidden it before he died. Maybe he had known. Maybe he had planned to give it to someone safe. Maybe he had run out of time. The drive contained footage. A black Lincoln forcing Nina's parents' car off the road. Kane stepping out. Meredia's nephew removing something from the wreck. It also contained an older file copied from the car. Shipment logs. Account numbers. Names of public officials. And one audio recording of Isabella Romano, telling Angelo that if he did not shut down the trafficking route, she would burn every family name in Chicago to the ground. Angelo's reply was calm. Then you will burn with it. Nina listened once. Luca did not. He stood by the window, hands clenched. Breathing like every inhale had glass in it. We can send this now, Elise said. Multiple agencies, press, backups. Once it is out, Angelo has no leverage except Matteo. Then send it after we see the boy, Nina said. Elise shook her head. If we wait, he may kill him when it goes public, Nina said. He wants the evidence. Let him think he can still win. Luca looked at her with awe and terror. You are good at this. No, she said. I am a woman who's been scared for too long. We notice things. They went to the church with one car. Luca drove. Nina sat beside him with the evidence bag in her lap and a microphone under her collar. Dom followed from a distance against orders, because Dom had never obeyed stupid orders in his life. St. Bartholomew's was old, half restored, rented out for private events by donors who liked history more than holiness. Rain had started again. Of course it had. In stories like theirs, rain seemed to know when to arrive. Angelo waited in the nave beneath stained glass saints. Matteo stood beside him, one of Angelo's men holding his shoulder. The sight almost broke Nina. Almost. She forced herself to walk. Short steps. Steady, Luca moved beside her like a storm in a suit. Angelo smiled. Love makes people punctual. Let him go, Nina said. Angelo looked amused. The waitress gives orders now. The mother does. Something flashed in Luca's eyes when she said it. Mother. Not sister. Not guardian. Mother in every way that mattered. Matteo heard it too. His chin trembled. Angelo clapped softly. Beautiful. Truly, this is why I enjoy family stories. Everyone thinks love makes them strong. Mostly it makes them easy to aim at. Luca's voice was low. You killed Isabella. Isabella killed herself when she believed morality could survive contact with business. She was your niece. She was a liability. Luca flinched as if struck. Nina saw Angelo enjoy it. That was his real pleasure. Not money. Not power. The ability to make pain feel personal. And my parents? Nina asked. Angelo turned to her. Your father was an honest mechanic. Very inconvenient. Nina's grip tightened on the evidence bag. He had a name. Most people do. Say it. Angelo blinked. What? His name was Daniel Torres. My mother was Elena. Say their names. Angelo laughed. I do not perform grief for servants. The words hit Luca like a match to gasoline. He stepped forward. Nina touched his arm, not to stop him from protecting her, to remind him what they had come to protect. Human dignity. Even in the face of a man who had none. Nina looked at Angelo. You think respect is something money gives you. It is not. It is something you owe people because they are human. My father fixed cars. My mother packed lunches. Mrs. Chen watches the children. I serve coffee. None of that made us disposable. Angelo's smile faded. For the first time, she had reached something in him. Not conscience. Ego. Give me the drive, he said. Nina lifted the bag. Let Matteo walk to me first. Angelo nodded to his man. Matteo was pushed forward. He ran the last steps. Nina dropped to her knees and caught him with one arm, holding the evidence away with the other. I am sorry, Matteo sobbed. I was scared. You did perfect, Nina whispered. You stayed alive. That was your job. Luca put one hand on Matteo's head. Protective and shaking, Angelo held out his hand. The drive. Nina stood, keeping Matteo behind her. She tossed the bag. Angelo caught it and smiled again. There. Was that so hard? No, Nina said. The hard part was waiting for you to confess. Angelo's expression changed. Lucas' phone buzzed. Elise's message appeared. Sent. All agencies. All media. All backups. Angelo opened the evidence bag and found not the drive, but a church donation pamphlet folded around a small card. On it Nina had written one sentence. Good people are not as helpless as you think. Angelo moved fast. He grabbed Nina by the throat and pulled a knife from his sleeve. Lucas' gun appeared in his hand. Every man in the church raised a weapon. Matteo screamed. No, the sound ripped through the nave. Loud, full. A child voice returned not in peace, but in love. Angelo dragged Nina backward toward the altar. Drop it, Romano. Lucas' face was white. Let her go. You can still save her. Walk away. Leave Chicago. Give me what remains of your network. The boy can grow up. The woman can serve coffee. You can breathe. Or you can be noble and watch her die like Isabella. Nina could barely breathe. Angelo's arm crushed her windpipe. She saw Lucas' hand shake. She saw the old nightmare in his eyes. The choice that had haunted him for years. Power or family. Revenge or love. Control or trust. Luca lowered his gun. Angelo smiled. Then Luca said, I already gave up the network. Angelo's smile faltered. What? Every account. Every route. Every name. Sent to the federal task force 10 minutes ago. The Romano organization is finished. He looked at Nina. Not Angelo. I choose them. Angelo's face twisted. For the first time, the mask broke. Then you are nothing. Luca's answer was quiet. No, I am finally someone. Nina drove her elbow back with everything she had. Angelo cursed. The knife slipped just enough. Luca fired once. Not to kill, but to disarm. The bullet struck an Angelo's shoulder. Dahm's men crashed through the side doors. Federal agents followed. Chaos erupted, but brief. Angelo's empire had relied on fear, secrecy, and paid silence. All three had been broken. Still, evil rarely leaves without taking a final swing. One of Angelo's men fired from the choir loft. Luca shoved Nina and Matteo behind a pew. The bullet hit him below the ribs. Nina saw the impact, saw his body fold, saw blood spread across his white shirt. The world narrowed to one sound, her own voice screaming his name. Angelo was tackled. Men shouted. Sirens wailed. Matteo crawled to Luca before Nina could stop him. Mr. Luca, he sobbed. Please, please. Luca's hand found the boy's cheek. Hey, buddy. His voice was thin. You were brave. Do not die. Luca tried to smile. Bossy kid. Nina pressed both hands to the wound the way a paramedic shouted over the phone. Blood warmed her fingers. Stay with me, she said. You do not get to make us love you and then leave. Luca looked at her, eyes unfocused but trying. Did we win? Yes. Good. No, do not close your eyes. Nino, if I do not finish that sentence. He breathed through pain. Tell Matteo I chose him. Matteo cried harder. I heard you. Luca's eyes filled. Good. Nina bent over him, forehead to his. Listen to me. You said you wanted to learn how to live. This is the lesson. You stay. You heal. You let people help you. That is how we do it now. Luca looked at her as if she were the only light left in the world. Yes, ma am, he whispered. Then the paramedics took him from her arms. The hospital became its own country. It had white walls, cold floors, bad coffee, and clocks that moved differently than clocks anywhere else. Nina learned that waiting was not empty. Waiting was full of terror, full of bargaining, full of footsteps that might be doctors, full of doors that opened too slowly. Luca survived the first surgery. Then he survived the second. Then an infection came for him like a patient enemy. For 2 weeks, Nina slept in a chair with a blanket Maria brought from home. She learned the language of machines, oxygen levels, drain, output, white blood cell count, blood pressure. She learned which nurses spoke gently because they cared, and which spoke gently because they had bad news. Matteo stayed at the estate with Maria and Mrs. Chen for the first few nights, but he cried so hard the third night that Nina let him come. He walked into Luca's hospital room, holding a plastic triceratops, and stood beside the bed. Luca was asleep, pale, thinner, connected to tubes that made him look less like a mafia boss than a man who could be lost. Matteo placed the dinosaur beside Luca's hand. For protection, he whispered. Luca did not wake. Matteo looked at Nina. Can he hear? Maybe. Then I will talk. And he did. Not all at once. Not perfectly. He sat in the chair beside Luca's bed and read from a dinosaur book. He stumbled over long names. He got frustrated. He kept going. When Luca finally opened his eyes near dawn, The first thing he heard was Matteo sounding out the word herbivore. "That one eats plants," Luca whispered. Matteo dropped the book and burst into tears. Nina woke so fast she almost fell from the chair. Luca tried to lift his hand. He could not. Matteo climbed carefully onto the bed, sobbing into the blanket. "You promised," he said. Luca's eyes filled. "I am keeping it. You almost did not. I know, do not do that again." "I will try." Matteo lifted his head, furious through tears. "No, promise." Luca looked at Nina, then back at Matteo. "I promise to do everything I can to stay." Matteo considered this. "That is not the same. It is the honest version." After a long moment, Matteo nodded. "Okay, children," Nina thought. Deserved honest promises. Not pretty lies that broke under pressure. Luca's recovery was not graceful. He hated the walker. He hated the breathing exercises. He hated being helped to the bathroom. He hated weakness with the private shame of a man who had built his identity around never needing anyone. One night, after snapping at a nurse, he closed his eyes and said, "I am sorry." The nurse, a woman named Patrice, with no patience for dramatic men, said, "Good. Now use the spirometer." Luca obeyed. Nina laughed for the first time in days. Later, when they were alone, Luca said, "I do not like who I am when I am helpless." Nina sat beside him. "Most people do not. I spent years making sure no one could see me like this. And now," he looked at the ceiling, "now a 7-year-old seen me cry because breathing hurt. And did he love you less?" Luca's eyes closed. "No, then maybe power was never what made you worthy." He opened his eyes. "You say things that ruin a man's whole world view." "Good." He reached for her hand. "Stay. I am here." "That is not what I asked." Nina understood. Stay, not just in the room. Stay in the life. Stay when the trial became ugly. Stay when the past came knocking. Stay when he had nightmares. Stay when he failed and had to apologize. Stay when love was not cinematic. Stay when healing was boring and repetitive and hard. She looked at him for a long time. "I will stay if you keep choosing the truth. Even when it makes me look terrible. Especially then." He nodded. "Then I will keep choosing it." She leaned down and kissed his forehead. It was not their first kiss. That came days later, in a quiet hospital garden, when he was strong enough to sit outside in a wheelchair and embarrassed enough to pretend he did not need the blanket over his legs. Nina kissed him softly, not because danger made love urgent, but because honesty had finally made love possible. He did not grab her. He did not pull. He let her choose the distance. When she rested her forehead against his, he whispered, "I love you." "Better timing," she said. He smiled. "I am learning." While Luca healed, the city began to crack open. Cain's confession led to suspensions, then arrests. Angelos records led to raids. Warehouses closed. Accounts froze. Men who had hidden behind restaurants and charities and campaign donations found their names in warrants. Not all of them fell. Nina was learning that justice in real life was not a clean wave washing dirt away. It was a slow broom. It missed corners. It needed people to keep sweeping. But there were survivors who came forward, because Isabella's files proved they had not imagined the darkness. There were families who learned where missing daughters had been moved. There were officers who had tried to report Cain years earlier and been silenced. Their stories mattered. Nina listened to some of them in Elisa's office, not because she needed more pain, but because she needed the story to be larger than her own grief. One woman, a shelter director named Maribel, told Nina, "Men like Angelo count on everyone thinking their suffering is private. That is how they isolate people. The moment people see the pattern, the power changes." Nina carried that sentence home. Pattern, power, people. It became part of what she would later build. The trial came months later, but the first hearing happened while Luca still walked with a cane. Matteo did not testify in open court. Elise fought for that. Belle supported it. His statement was recorded with a trauma specialist present, in a room with soft chairs and no uniforms. He held Nina's hand and Luca sat outside because Matteo asked him to guard the door. "Not inside," Matteo said. "Outside, like a triceratops." Luca took the assignment seriously. When Matteo came out, he looked exhausted but taller somehow. "I did it," he said. Luca knelt with difficulty. Wincing, "Yes, you did. Do brave people get ice cream?" Nina wiped her eyes. "Absolutely. 2 scoops," Luca said. 3. Nina looked at him. "Do not undermine my parenting. I am recovering from a gunshot wound. That excuse expires soon." Matteo laughed. The sound filled the courthouse hallway. People turned. Nina did not care. Let them look. Let them see a child who had been quiet, because evil had frightened him. Now, laughing in the same building, where truth would be recorded. That was not a small victory. It was a holy one. 6 months later, Torres unlocked the front door of her cafe at 6 in the morning and stood still for 1 full minute before turning on the lights. She did that every day. Not because she was afraid, because gratitude needed a ritual. And she had chosen this one. The cafe was small, warm, and real. Not a gift wrapped in guilt. Not a mafia front. Not a fairy tale with blood under the floor. It was funded through legal restitution, victim compensation, and a loan. Nina insisted on signing herself, even though Luca called it unnecessary and Elise called it emotionally predictable. Nina named it Second Cup, because everyone who came in deserved another chance at warmth. Mrs. Chen baked in the back 3 mornings a week, and bossed everyone around like she had survived kidnapping purely to improve pastry standards. Maria handled the books because, as she said, rich men are helpless with receipts, and poor women are too busy surviving to learn tax law. Dom stopped by every afternoon, pretending to inspect security, though everyone knew he came for apple turnovers. Mateo sat at a corner table before school, doing homework with a seriousness that made customers whisper about how adorable he was until he glared at them. He spoke now, not always, not perfectly. Some days, fear still closed his throat. Some nights, a car backfired and he crawled into Nina and Lucas' bed without a word. Healing was not a straight road. It was a road with potholes, rain, detours, and days when you had to pull over and breathe. But he was moving. That was enough. He had a therapist who let him draw when words were too heavy. He had a teacher who did not punish silence. He had Nina, who no longer apologized for needing help. And he had Luca, who arrived at the cafe every morning after physical therapy with a slight limp, a plain button-down shirt, and the same dangerous eyes softened by ordinary life. The first time he walked in without a suit, Mrs. Chen cried. Then she slapped his arm and told him he looked unemployed. He laughed so hard he had to hold his side. The Romano organization did not survive. That was part of the deal. Luca gave testimony. He handed over accounts, names, routes, and officials who had eaten at clean tables with dirty hands. Some men went to prison. Some disappeared before they could be arrested. Some tried to threaten him, and learned that leaving violence behind did not mean forgetting how doors locked. But Luca did not return to the throne. That mattered. He sold what could be sold legally. He placed properties into community trusts. He funded shelters for trafficking survivors through a foundation managed by people who did not owe him fear. Nina insisted the foundation board include social workers, lawyers, survivors, and local residents, not men in suits naming buildings after themselves, she said. Luca agreed. He was learning, slowly, sometimes painfully. There were days he still wanted simple answers. A name, a threat, a gun. Nina reminded him that peace was more complicated than war. War only asked what you were willing to destroy. Peace asked what you were willing to rebuild. Detective Kane pleaded guilty after the recording, the recovered drive, and Mateo's carefully supported testimony made silence impossible. Nina attended the hearing. She wore a blue dress, not because she wanted to look strong, but because her mother had loved blue. When the judge asked if she wanted to make a victim impact statement, Nina stood with Mateo holding one hand and Luca holding the other. She did not speak about revenge. She spoke about names. Daniel Torres, Elena Torres, Isabella Romano, Marco Romano, Mrs. Chen, who survived but still flinched at Vans, Mateo, who lost his voice because adults decided power mattered more than a child's life. She told the court that corruption is not only money in an envelope. It is every moment a powerful person decides someone poor is easier to erase. She said justice should not depend on wealth, family name, or who has the better lawyer. Her voice shook. She kept going. When she finished, Kane did not look at her. That was fine. Nina had not spoken for him. She had spoken for the living. Angelo Moretti's trial became a national story for 3 weeks. Then the world moved on, as it always does. But Nina did not need the world to remember forever. She needed the truth written where it could not be scrubbed away. She needed Mateo to grow up, knowing his parents had not been careless, that his memory had not been broken, that his silence had protected him until he was safe enough to speak. On the wall of the cafe, near the register, Nina hung a small framed note. Not a quote from a famous writer, not a motivational slogan, just a sentence Mrs. Chen said after coming home from the hospital. Kindness is not weakness. It is a risk worth taking carefully. Nina liked the carefully part. It made the lesson honest. Her kindness had saved Luca, but it had also put her in danger. That did not make kindness foolish. It meant kindness needed courage, boundaries, and community. She taught Mateo that. She taught herself too. The cafe became more than a business before Nina realized it. At first, it was just coffee, pastries, and a clean bathroom for people who bought something. Then one rainy afternoon, a girl from the shelter came in with Maribel, the director Nina had met during the case. The girl was 17, thin and jumpy, with sleeves pulled over her hands. She sat near the door and watched every man who entered. Nina did not ask questions. She brought hot chocolate and a muffin and said, "No charge today." The girl stared at her. Why? Nina thought about all the times help had arrived with strings, money in lockers, men with guns, promises that sounded like cages. She smiled gently. Because some days should have one thing in them that is not hard. The girl looked down. She did not cry. Nina was glad. People did not always need tears. Sometimes they needed to eat without being watched. After that, Maribel started bringing girls by after appointments. Then a caseworker asked if the cafe could host a quiet job skills morning once a month. Nina said yes, then panicked in the pantry because she did not know how to teach anyone anything. Mrs. Chen found her there and said, "You teach by not treating people like they are broken furniture." So Nina taught coffee basics, how to count a drawer, how to handle rude customers without swallowing your whole soul, how to say, "I will get my manager," even when you were the manager. Luca watched from the corner one morning, pretending to read invoices. A young woman spilled steamed milk and flinched like someone might hit her. Nina said, "Good, now you know the cloth is too full. Try again." The woman looked at her for a long moment, then tried again. Later, Luca said, "You know what you are building." "Right," Nina wiped the counter. "A cafe." "No." He looked around the warm room, the mismatched chairs, the bulletin board with shelter resources, the corner where Mateo's drawings hung beside local art, a place where people are not punished for needing another chance. Nina kept wiping because her eyes had filled. "That is still a cafe," he smiled. Of course. Their relationship grew there too. Not in grand declarations, in habits. Luca learned how Nina liked her coffee. Nina learned that Luca pretended not to like sweet pastries, then ate the corners off Mrs. Chennis' almond cake when no one was looking. Luca learned to ask before sending guards with her. Nina learned to tell him when she was afraid instead of turning fear into anger. They argued. Of course they did. Love did not make two stubborn people suddenly easy. One night, Luca found out Nina had gone alone to meet a reporter writing about the case. He was furious. Not loud, worse. "Quiet, you should have told me," he said. "I do not need permission." "No, but I need information if I am supposed to help keep you safe. And I need a life that does not require reporting every movement like I am under house arrest." He paced once, then stopped because pacing still hurt his side. "I am not trying to control you. I know, do you?" Nina crossed her arms. "I know your intention. I also know how it feels. Both can be true." That slowed him. He sat down carefully. "Tell me how to do it differently." She wanted to stay angry. It was hard when a man chose humility before pride could finish putting on its armor. "Ask," she said. "Do not instruct. Do not arrange everything before I know there is a problem. Do not turn my world into a security plan without me." "Okay, and I will tell you when I am going somewhere that might create risk." He nodded. "That was too easy. I am in pain and you are right. I am conserving energy." She laughed despite herself. He smiled. Arguments like that did not weaken them. They taught the relationship where the floorboards creaked. Mateo watched them sometimes. Nina realized this and became careful in a new way. Not careful like hiding conflict. Careful like showing repair. After one argument about Luca buying Mateo an absurdly expensive telescope without asking, Mateo looked worried. "Are you breaking up?" Nina knelt beside him. "No, we are disagreeing." It sounded mad. We were mad. Luca sat across from them, looking uncomfortable but present. "Being mad does not mean love is gone," he said. "It means something needs to be talked about." Mateo thought this over. Do people leave when they are mad? Nina's heart hurt. Some people do. We are working on not doing that. Luca nodded. "If I need space, I will say I need space. I will not disappear." Mateo looked at Nina. "You too. Me too. And me. You too," Nina said. "You can be mad and still belong." That became one of their family rules. You can be mad and still belong. Mateo wrote it on a card and taped it inside his closet. A month later, Luca proposed. Not in a restaurant. Not in front of a crowd. He knew better by then. He did it in the cafe after closing. While Nina counted the register and Mateo sat at a table, building a Lego dinosaur with Dom. Luca waited until Nina finished, because he had learned not to interrupt her when numbers were involved. Then he placed a small velvet box on the counter. Nina looked at it. If this is another dramatic life event, I need to sit down. Probably wise. She sat. He opened the box. The ring was simple, vintage, a small diamond in an old setting. Not flashy. Not a trophy. It was not Isabella S., he said immediately. Nina looked up. He understood her well now. It was my grandmother S. My mother kept it for me. I want to ask you with something that belongs to love, not grief. Nina's eyes burned. Luca. He took a breath. I am not asking because you saved me. I am not asking because Matteo needs a father. I am not asking because danger made us confuse fear for love. His voice shook. I am asking because I know what mornings look like with you. I know what arguments look like. I know what silence looks like. I know what it means to be seen by you and still be asked to become better. Nina Hatteras, will you marry me? Not because I can protect you from everything. I cannot, but because I will stand with you through whatever comes. Nina looked at Matteo. He was pretending not to listen so hard that his entire body leaned toward them. Dom was staring at the ceiling. Mrs. Chen stood in the kitchen doorway, with flour on her hands and tears in her eyes. Maria had one hand pressed to her mouth. Nina turned back to Luca. You understand I will still run the cafe my way, yes. And Matteo's therapist appointments stay private unless he invites you in. Yes, and if you start acting like a tragic Mafia statue, I am allowed to tell you. I expect it. And we get a golden retriever, not a German shepherd trained to disarm intruders. Luca hesitated. Nina narrowed her eyes. Luca, one golden retriever, he said, no tactical commands. Matteo whispered, yes. Nina laughed through tears. Then yes. Luca closed his eyes like the word had entered him deeper than the bullet ever had. He slid the ring onto her finger. Matteo abandoned the Lego dinosaur and launched himself at them. Dom pretended to cough. Mrs. Chen sobbed openly and blamed the onions. Though there were no onions. They married 3 months later in the garden at the estate, under strings of warm lights, and a sky that threatened rain but held back. Nina wore a simple dress. Luca wore a dark suit because some habits died hard, but no tie because Matteo said ties made him look too funeral. Mrs. Chen baked the cake. Maria arranged flowers. Dom walked Matteo down the aisle, because Matteo said he needed someone who knew where the exits were. The ceremony was small, not because Luca could not afford large, because Nina had learned difference between being celebrated and being displayed. Belle attended. Elise cried and denied it. Maribel brought 2 women from the shelter who had become Nina's employees. There were empty chairs, too, for Daniel, Elena, Isabella, Marco. Nina insisted on them. Absence deserves a place, she said, during the vows. Luca did not promise to keep Nina safe forever. He promised to never make fear the language of their home. Nina did not promise to heal him. She promised to tell the truth, even when truth was harder than comfort. Matteo held the rings and took his job so seriously that no one dared smile until he smiled first. When the ceremony ended, he looked at Luca and said, "Are you my dad now?" Luca knelt in the grass, careful with his side. "Only if you choose me." Matteo thought about it. Do dads have to know dinosaur names? I am studying. Do dads stay when kids are quiet? Luca's voice went soft. Yes, do dads say sorry? Good ones do. Matteo nodded once. Then I choose you. Luca cried in front of everyone. No one teased him, not even Mrs. Chen. That night, after guests left and the garden lights swayed in the wind, Nina stood with Luca near the rose bushes, where they had once argued about revenge. Do you miss the old life? She asked. He looked across the lawn where Matteo chased fireflies with Dom. Sometimes, he said, when I feel helpless, when I think power would make fear stop. And then I look at him. I look at you. I remember fear is not the same as safety. Nina leaned against him. Good. He kissed her hair. Do you regret the diner? She was quiet for a while. No, never. Some days I regret how much it cost. She looked up at him. But I do not regret who we became. He accepted that. Love, the real kind, had room for complicated answers. Later that night, when the house was quiet, Nina found Matteo asleep with the golden retriever puppy curled at his feet. They had named her Pancake because Luca was still not forgiven for the dinosaur breakfast disaster. Luca stood behind Nina and whispered, "He looks peaceful. He is getting there. Are you?" Nina looked at her ring. Then, at the child in the bed. Then at the man beside her. I am getting there too. Peace did not arrive like a final scene in a movie. It arrived in pieces. A child sleeping through thunder. A man apologizing before pride took over. A woman opening a business in her own name. A family leaving hallway lights on because safety was built from small promises kept. The trial ended on a Friday. Angelo Moretti was convicted on enough counts to ensure he would die behind walls. Even his money could not polish. The newspapers used words like empire, kingpin, downfall, scandal. Nina hated most of them. They made it sound glamorous. It had not been glamorous. It had been old women frightened in grocery store parking lots. It had been children losing voices. It had been mothers dying in cars. It had been girls hidden in shipments, while powerful men ate expensive dinners and called themselves businessmen. So when a reporter outside the courthouse asked Nina what she wanted people to remember, she did not give the answer they expected. She did not say justice was served. She did not say evil lost. She did not say love conquered all, though some days it felt close. She looked into the camera and said, "Remember the names of the people who were treated like they did not matter. Then make sure the next person like them is believed sooner." The clip went farther than she expected. People came into the cafe for weeks saying they had seen her. Some wanted photos. Nina said no to most. She did not want to become a symbol. So polished, she stopped being a person. But when quiet women came in and said, "I believed my story mattered after hearing you," she sat with them if she could. She listened. That became another kind of work, less visible than court, more important than praise. Luca struggled after the trial, more than Nina expected. During the case, there had always been something to do. Meetings, evidence, security, testimony. Once the verdict came, silence moved in. It sat in chairs. It waited in hallways. It followed him to bed. He had spent his whole adult life commanding men, anticipating threats, building power, feeding guilt. Now there was no empire to run, no war to win, no Angelo to hunt, just mornings, marriage, a child's lunchbox, physical therapy, foundation meetings, quiet. Quiet can be merciless to a man who has used noise to avoid himself. One night, Nina woke and found his side of the bed empty. She found him downstairs in the kitchen, sitting in the dark, a glass of water untouched in front of him. "Nightmare?" she asked. "Memory." She sat across from him. Pancake lifted her head from the rug, decided no food was involved, and went back to sleep. "Which one?" Nina asked. Luca stared at the glass. "All of them." She waited. "I testified about a warehouse today in a deposition. Men died there years ago. I ordered it. Not directly. That is what cowards say. Right, not directly. But men understood what I wanted, and they did it." His voice was flat. That frightened her more than tears. "I spent the afternoon talking about it like logistics, dates, routes, names. Then I came home and Matteo asked me to help with a science project." He looked at her. How do those two men live in the same body? Nina felt the weight of the question. She could have softened it. She did not. They just do. He looked away. "That is not comforting." "No, do you ever think you made a mistake marrying me?" "No, Nina. I think I married a man who's done terrible things and is choosing to stop lying about them. That is not the same as easy. I do not know how to forgive myself." "Maybe do not start there." He looked at her. "Where do I start?" "By telling the truth. Making repair where repair is possible. Accepting consequences where it is not. And not using self-hatred as a way to avoid change." He gave a tired laugh. "You and Elise should charge by the sentence." Nina reached across the table. "You need more help than I can give." He stiffened. She squeezed his hand. "That is not rejection. That is love with boundaries. Therapy," he said. Like the word tasted strange. "Yes, men like me do not sit in rooms and talk about feelings. Men like you die early, ruin families, or become ghosts at the breakfast table. Try something else." He stared at her. Then, slowly, he nodded. "Okay, the first therapist did not work." Luca said the man looked afraid of him. Nina said most sane people did at first. The second therapist was a former military trauma counselor named Dr. Harris, a woman in her 60s who wore bright scarves and did not blink when Luca said the word murder. After their third session, Luca came home angry. "She told me guilt is not a plan." Nina tried very hard not to smile. "Terrible woman. I know what you are doing. Supporting your healing. Enjoying my discomfort. Both can be true." He kissed her because he could now. Because the house did not feel like a battlefield every time tenderness entered it. Matteo adjusted to the new family in waves. Adoption was discussed slowly, carefully, with therapists and lawyers, and lots of room for Matteo to feel everything. Nina made sure he knew adoption would not erase Daniel and Elena. "You do not have to replace anyone," she told him. "Love can add. It does not have to subtract." Matteo asked if he could have 3 parents in heaven and on earth. Nina said he could have as many people loving him as his heart could hold. Luca said paperwork was less important than choice. Matteo said paperwork sounded important. If it meant school forms could stop saying guardian. They laughed. Then they cried. Then they began. On adoption day, Matteo wore a dinosaur tie he had chosen himself. Luca wore a matching one because Matteo insisted. Nina wore blue again. In the courtroom, the judge asked Matteo if he understood what adoption meant. Matteo said, "It means Luca is my dad legally, but he was already doing the job." The judge smiled. Luca cried. Again, Matteo patted his arm and whispered, "Your body is telling the truth." Afterward, they went for ice cream. 3 scoops. No one argued. The foundation grew. Second Cup became its unofficial meeting place. Nina hired 2 survivors part-time, then 3. She created rules that were different from the rules at Kowalski's. No customer was allowed to insult staff. No one had to explain every absence publicly. Schedules were built around court dates, therapy, childcare, and school. Mistakes were corrected, not weaponized. Some people said she was too soft to run a business. Nina learned to smile at that. Softness, when disciplined, could be stronger than fear. Her employees worked hard because they were respected, not because they were terrified. Customers noticed. The cafe became known for excellent coffee, stubborn boundaries, and a golden retriever who believed every patron had come specifically to admire her. Mrs. Chen became a local legend for pastries and unsolicited advice. Maria organized community dinners once a month. Dom managed security quietly, and somehow became the person teenagers asked for help fixing bikes. Luca joined the foundation board but refused to chair it. "I have spent enough of my life at the head of tables," he said. Instead, he listened, at first, badly, then better. One meeting, a survivor challenged him directly. "You profited from systems like the one that hurt us," she said. The room went still. Luca looked at Nina. Nina did not rescue him. He turned back to the woman. "Yes," he said. "I did, so why should we trust you?" He took a breath. "You should not trust me because I ask. You should judge what I do over time. And you should have the power to remove me from this board if my presence harms the work." The woman stared at him, then nodded once. Later in the car, Luca said, "That was unpleasant." Nina said, "It was accountability. I prefer being shot." "I know, do not look so pleased." "I am very pleased." He shook his head, but he was smiling. A year after the diner, Nina finally emptied the last box from her old apartment. She had moved the essentials long ago, but some boxes had remained in storage because grief made ordinary objects heavy. Inside one box were her mother's recipe cards, her father's work shirts, Matteo's old school drawings, and a cracked picture frame from the night the apartment was destroyed. At the bottom was the toy police badge Kane's men had left on Matteo's pillow. "Mine." Nina stared at it for a long time. Luca found her sitting on the floor. "Do you want me to throw it away?" he asked. "No." She turned it over in her hand. "I used to think this meant he owned our fear, and now," Nina stood. "Now it is evidence of how wrong he was." She took it to the cafe and placed it in a shadow box behind the counter. Not where customers could see easily, but where she could. Beside it, she placed a small card. "No one owns your fear forever." Matteo saw it after school. "Is that the badge?" "Yes." "Why keep it?" Nina thought carefully. "Because sometimes healing means deciding what a thing means now." Matteo looked at it. "It means he lost." Nina smiled. "Yes." Matteo took a marker and added 2 words to the card. "We stayed." Nina left it that way. One evening, after the cafe closed, Luca arrived with a velvet box. Nina looked at it and groaned. "If that is another diamond, I am throwing a muffin at you." "It is not a diamond. You said that last time." "Last time it was a sapphire." Luca, he smiled and opened the box. Inside was a silver locket, old and delicate, worn smooth by generations of hands. "It was my grandmother's," he said. "My mother kept it. She wanted Isabella to have it. Isabella never did." His voice softened. "For a long time, I thought giving it to someone else would mean replacing her. It does not. Love is not a room with one chair." Nina recognized her own words and felt tears rise. "That was a good line," she whispered. "I have been saving it." He fastened the locket around her neck with careful fingers. His hand still had scars. So did hers, though most were invisible. Matteo looked up from his homework. "Are you guys being mushy again?" "Yes," Luca said. "It is very serious." Matteo rolled his eyes. Then he pulled a folded paper from his backpack and gave it to Luca. "My teacher said I could read this at family day." Luca opened it. His expression changed. Nina watched him read. Then he sat down because his bad leg suddenly seemed to need it. "Read it out loud," Matteo said. Luca cleared his throat. "My family is not normal," he read. "My sister says normal is just a setting on a washing machine. My dad says family is who stays when things are hard. My grandma Mrs. Chen says family is who feeds you. Maria says family is who knows where the clean towels are. Dom says family is who checks the exits. I think family is all of those things. My first dad and mom loved me. They died. I miss them. My second dad did bad things before, but he is learning good things now. He helps me when I am scared. He says brave does not mean loud. My sister is my hero, because she was scared and did the right thing anyway. I think love is when people do not throw you away, even when you are quiet. Luca stopped reading. He pressed the paper against his mouth. Matteo shifted nervously. Is it bad? Luca pulled him into his arms. It is the best thing I have ever read. Better than your legal papers. Much better. Better than dinosaur books. Luca hesitated. Matteo narrowed his eyes. Careful, Nina laughed through tears. Outside, Chicago moved under evening rain. Cars passed. People hurried home. Somewhere. Men still made cruel choices. Somewhere. Women like Nina still counted tips and hoped rent would wait. Somewhere. Children carried memories too heavy for their small bodies. The world had not become safe just because one family survived, but one corner of it had changed. A cafe glowed on a wet street. An old woman baked. A former Mafia boss wiped tables when his wife told him to. A boy who once could not speak read stories aloud. And Nina, who had spent years believing survival was the best she could hope for, stood behind the counter with a silver locket over her heart and understood that healing was not being untouched by darkness. Healing was choosing, again and again, not to become it. Later that night, they finally went to the Field Museum, just as Luca had promised months before. The museum was nearly empty for a private charity event. Matteo stood beneath the towering skeleton of a dinosaur and tilted his head back in wonder. Luca stood beside him, one hand in Nina's, the other resting lightly on Matteo's shoulder. That one is huge, Matteo whispered. Still extinct, Luca said. Matteo smiled. Size is not everything. Your sister has been teaching you. She teaches everybody. Nina leaned into Luca's side. Some people are slow learners, but handsome, Luca said. Debatable, Matteo groaned. Mushy, they laughed. It echoed up into the bones of ancient creatures and came back softer. On the drive home, Matteo fell asleep in the back seat with his dinosaur book open on his lap. Nina watched him in the mirror. His face was peaceful, not because the past had vanished, because the present had become strong enough to hold it. Luca drove with one hand, his other resting between them. Nina took it. Do you ever miss it? She asked. The power. Luca was quiet for a while. Sometimes, he said, when I am afraid. She appreciated the honesty. And then I remember power did not save Marco. Fear did not save Isabella. Control did not save anyone I loved. He glanced at her. But you asking me to be better did. Nina squeezed his hand. You did the work. You stayed while I learned. You stayed alive while I yelled at you. A powerful motivator. They drove through Chicago, past the church where everything ended, past the diner where everything began. Kowalski's had closed 2 months earlier. Nina felt strange seeing the dark windows. So much of her old pain lived there. So did the first brave thing she had done, without knowing how brave it was. Pull over, she said. Luca parked across the street. Rain dotted the windshield. Nina looked at the corner booth through the glass, barely visible in the dark. That morning, I thought I was just lying to a cop, she said. You were saving my life. I was saving mine too. I just did not know it yet. Luca turned off the engine. For a moment, they sat with the rain. Then Nina saw something tucked under the diner door, a white envelope. Her body went still. Luca saw it too. The old instincts returned to his face, controlled but present. Stay here. No, Nina said. We do this together. Remember. They crossed the street under the rain. Luca opened the envelope carefully with a key. Inside was a photograph. Old, grainy. Isabella Romano, standing beside an unknown woman outside a courthouse. On the back, written in black ink, was one sentence. Angelo Moretti did not act alone. Nina felt Luca go very still beside her. The past, it seemed, had one more door. She looked at the man she loved, the boys sleeping in the car, the city shining around them, like a wound that had not fully closed. Then she folded the photograph and placed it in her pocket. Tomorrow, she said. Luca looked at her. Tomorrow, tonight we take our son home. His eyes softened. And tomorrow, Nina looked once more at the diner, at the place where kindness had turned into danger, and danger had somehow turned into family. Tomorrow, she said, we find the truth, but we do it without losing ourselves. Luca took her hand. Together, they walked back through the rain,